Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch, listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar from the Hardware Podcast, and we are here in the wee hours of the morning on the west. I guess the Rocky, not Rocky Mountains, like I guess the Western United States. I'm trying to fit, the regions we're in into one region. We're into one region, but we're on this grind talking about, kind of like an emergency meeting to talk about some of the biggest college football news because it's been a boring news cycle throughout the summer. And as I mentioned on my last podcast with Cuthbert Hutton of the Last of the Hard podcast for Army, that we'll take any crumbs. So this is the crumbs we're eating. We're eating these crumbs at 4:43 Mountain Time, and for Brock, straight off of work at 3:43 a.m. Pacific Time. Brock, how's everything going?
It's going good, man. Just happy to finally get back on the podcast with you. It's been quite a while. And it's very nice to talk about something else besides Hawaii and UNLV. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am too. I would love to talk about Hawaii and UNLV in the meantime, especially like the Mountain West too, because that is it's a very interesting time. Like what is there to say? Like, I mean, I've even heard San Diego State to like Conference USA for a single year and then to the Pac-12. So it's just a wild time in that conference.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think that's kind of the theme that we're going to get into shortly with the ACC is that in this new era of conference realignment, and basically the post, it doesn't even, people want to say it starts with Oklahoma and Texas, but realistically, this goes back almost a decade to when the Big Ten expanded initially, and when they added Nebraska, and they became, obviously, they had more teams, but they became a conference that would has two separate divisions. Now, obviously, that kind of had a slow but pretty definite snowball effect to where we're seeing teams move left and right. And now the ACC is one of those conferences, just like the Mountain West, where we don't exactly know where they're going to go from there. Obviously, San Diego State was one of the big dogs in the Mountain West, and they looked like they were leaving to the Pac-12. The Mountain West has made a very strict stance, saying, "Well, you intended on leaving. That's the way we perceive it. So basically, go, do what you want to do, but we're not going to take you back." Almost like a lovers that didn't really work out in the relationship sense of things. So what's going to snowball from that is that going to lead to the Pac-12 expanding in the wake of USC and UCLA leaving. There's some big teams over there: Fresno State, San Diego State, like I mentioned, Boise State. If they can get together with Avalos for during his third year in charge, I believe. Wait, something like that. Whatever it is, those top teams of the Mountain West might move on, which is going to ask the Mountain West a big question of, they're one of the premier conferences outside of the Power Five. Who are they going to add in order to compete on the national standard? And one of the things that they do have is a really good TV deal compared to the rest of the Group of Five. So now, when you look at what we're about to talk about with the ACC and with this new deal with CW, how is that going to play with them and how they handle their conference in terms of the massive realignment happening around them?
Exactly. And you hit great segue to our main topic. I mean, if you're a college football diehard, you know this news happened. We have ACC, the ACC. I guess to provide some context, Raycom has been a partner with the ACC for almost 70 years of history. They're intertwined in syndication, which I remember growing up in Massachusetts, in Central Mass and Worcester, of course, a Boston TV market, and on the local CW actually. And I guess before the CW merger in 2005, which like I wasn't, as a 6 year old, I didn't know that the WB and UPN merged together. Like that was something that I didn't know happened. But on those channels, they would pick up the ACC, the Raycom Sports syndicated game of the week. So I mean, which I guess was sponsored by Jefferson Pilot, which I mean was like the Jefferson Pilot game of the week. But like that's neither here nor there. There's a huge tradition in the ACC licensing a game of the week, which is always usually a game that is just not wanted by the other networks. So I mean, you get like a heavy recipe of Duke back in those days, but but yeah, so the CW has agreed for 13 games on the schedule. And honestly, like they're gonna kick off with kind of a pretty solid game. A good Big East matchup, a Big East rematch in Pitt versus Cincinnati, and the rest of the schedule is pending, but you can kind of see like which games you're gonna select. But honestly, I think this is good for the conference. I really do because you look at the Big Ten, their model was to get as many games on network TV as possible with the Fox, CBS, and NBC. where they pretty much have three windows. There'll be a noon game on Fox. There'll probably be the 3:30 slot on CBS, and then there's a big Saturday night on NBC. Which I gotta say, the hype up song by Fall Out Boy. This is Fall Out Boy's second take on a college football theme song, and this one hits. But I'm a fan of it, and it's not the primary like partner. Like these games would have been on the crumbling Valley Sports, regional sports networks, which I know, Brock, you living in Las Vegas, that you can talk. I mean, that you can speak on. I think it's like the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the Las Vegas WNBA team moving their games to local TV. So I just think it's a good move. People will panic because it's a CW. When they think about the CW, they think about the Arrowverse or whatever it's called. But yeah, Brock, I mean, I want to know your thoughts.
I think it's brilliant. Whenever you have an opportunity to put a college football game in for the ability for a larger fan base to view it, it's never a bad thing. I know some people are feeling a certain type of way because of the what's the right way to say it? The kind of look that CW has, kind of the reputation that CW has in its programming. Shows like Heart of Dixie or Arrow. That's not something that really speaks loudly to a typical college football fan. But at the end of the day, like you said, I'm in Vegas. It's very hard for me to watch football games. And if I may be frank about it, yeah, I do have football TV. But a lot of times I'm using my brother's streaming service, NV Streams, in order to get those games because they are on Valley Sports and like ACC TV, and like all the whatever, all the various streams there are. And when you do that, you're not allowing some of these programs to grow, and that's a big issue when it comes to why teams move because of those TV deals. Yeah, Oklahoma and Texas are moving to the SEC because they feel that they're premier programs, but at the end of the day, cash is king. And the SEC is what they're doing is they're giving him a better TV deal compared to the non-existent one in the Big 12. And we're kind of seeing the kind of fallout from that in the Power Five conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC are above everyone else, and it's not even remotely close. The SEC has had their CBS deal locked down for years, if not decades. Quite frankly, I can't remember a time I would watch a marquee SEC matchup and it wasn't on CBS or some national network, which was most likely CBS in the day. When it comes to the Big Ten, they've really established themselves with Fox to the Big Noon Kickoff. Now, I hate the Big Noon Kickoff, man, make that very clear. There's no reason why we should have a primetime game that early. I shouldn't have to wake up at 9 a.m. my time to watch Michigan, Ohio State, or Ohio State and Wisconsin, or Michigan State. But it's a little bit ridiculous, but at the end of the day, they still have that allocated time slot that a lot of the coverage is going on. What do the other three conferences have? They have Pac-12 has Pac-12 after dark, but by that time, most people have kind of tuned out already. Only USC, UCLA, Oregon, sometimes Stanford when they were good, sometimes Washington, if people are feeling them, are going to get those TV spots. And UCLA and USC are leaving, so it kind of bites them in the butt again. Then you look at the Big 12, who is really running their TV rates? Yeah, the best games are played on ESPN. Outside of that, how am I going to watch BYU versus Cincinnati? How am I going to watch BYU versus Texas Tech? How am I going to watch Oklahoma State versus Baylor? Like, unless they're just going to be jumbled into like an ESPN2, ESPNU, like all the sub channels of it. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. For the ACC, you're not like you mentioned, you're not going to see Florida State playing on there. Rarely, you're gonna not really gonna see Miami. You're not gonna see Clemson. But what you are gonna see is a promising Duke team that took a tremendous step up last year on the Magelco. What you are gonna see is arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Drake May. A lot more on TV. What you are gonna see is a Pitt team that has been very successful in the past, especially with grooming young quarterbacks, and a guy Phil Jerkovich, who we both, I think, a lot of us in the college football community had a lot of high hopes for with him at Boston College. Now he's going to a place with Pat Narduzzi where he can really develop, and we could see him evolve into that quarterback in front of all of our eyes. What that also does is allow kids at home to watch his programs. So when they do get recruited by them, they have some kind of standard or basis for them to go and see, oh, I remember watching Pitt on TV. I remember watching Boston College on TV, Virginia Tech on TV, whoever. At the end of the day, going back to my first point after my whole word mumble jumble, there's nothing wrong with getting more games on finding easier ways to view more games. And that's why I'm totally in favor of this move. I love this move. And on the flip side, CW viewers are going to get exposed to college football, which can bring in an even bigger fan base that way. Whatever way you want to shape it, love the move. I'm really glad the ACC is looking towards the future, especially for a conference that has been looking to the past for way too long.
And I think it's interesting. Those are all great points you made, especially on the points like who exactly you're gonna see, like what type of schools you're gonna see like on these games. Because again, it's not like the CW is getting the first choice of games. Like, the types of like they'd be getting if this package was, if this package existed last year, they'd be getting games like Kennesaw State versus Georgia Tech, like those type of games. But also opens the door for, the CWD exposure in the same way the Big Ten Network got exposure on the very first day that it broadcasted games when App State beat Michigan in that same type of way, where it's like, yes, you'll probably have an FCS versus FBS matchup. I know on my Twitter, with the network designations, there's no network designation for VMI NC State. Like that game, it will likely be on CW. But like, what if VMI beats NC State? Like that'll be one of the greatest cultural upsets of all time, and it'll be on the CW to give people a reason to watch the Raycom produced games on the CW. So I agree with all your points, and I just want to make something clear. Like I had a discussion with someone on Twitter who thought the production was going to be bad, and it's like either way, the same production company is distributing the games. I feel like there needs to be a class in school on how syndication and broadcast distribution works out. Either way, Raycom is not a TV station. They're going to distribute the games. And it's not like with Conference USA and beIN Sports, those dreaded days in the mid 2010s and late 2019 or late 2010s when it's a network that needed to work out the kinks. Like Raycom has had 70 years to, distributing ACC broadcasts, or a heritage of 70 years. It stretches back to when they weren't called Raycom, to say the least. So these broadcasts are going to be crisp and refined. And on top of that, too, like you said, it's not going to be like people are saying it's not like this is reason for Florida State, Clemson, Miami, for them all for the floodgates to open. It's like they're not going to be on these broadcasts, at least for football. Like for basketball, there's a much more robust schedule for basketball because the season's frankly bigger. So they might appear once or twice, but it might be like a game against a bottom feeder in the conference if it's North Carolina or Duke. But back to football, like it's gonna be like you said, the North Carolinas, the Pitts, or the Boston colleges, even the post Sam Hartman Wake Forest, you know. So it'll be those type of teams. And I think it's great as well too. Like us both being group of five guys, where it's like looking at the non-conference the schedule for the ACC. I definitely feel like the games that'll be selected will be games involving group of five teams. In terms of the syndication, like you look at, you can get Army Syracuse. Army Syracuse is on September 23rd. I think that's a front runner for being on the CW. Army always plays Power Five teams well. Syracuse, if they get off to a hot start like this past year, you could be looking at a situation where wishfully thinking Army beats a ranked Syracuse team, the first ranked victory since '72. But yeah, I guess my words aside, like this is just good for the conference because it puts them in more network TV windows, and it's not like it's a country that's or a conference that's lacking network TV windows because last year the ACC had 15 games on ABC as part of their contract. That's one per week. So if they're strategic with their windows, then you could have back-to-back network TV windows.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people look down in the ACC because of the perceived lack of success from the conference. Because the top dog in Syracuse and Clemson hasn't made the college football playoffs since they lost to LSU in 2020. Florida State hasn't been at national championship level since they won it in the BCS era. Um, Miami hasn't been that great for a while, except that 1 year under Mark Richt. So people, I think that because of that, people think that the ACC isn't really a fun conference to watch anymore. But when you go down the list, there has been some teams that have put some tremendous talent on that football field. Like Wake Forest is one of the best passing offenses of all time, and realistically, they should have been a shoe in to the college football playoffs a couple of years ago if they were able to beat Clemson, who they lost to in overtime, and then Pitt in the ACC championship. Pitt was a great team with Kenny Pickett and Biletnikoff winner Jordan Addison. You look at a team like Duke, like I mentioned, who took a massive step up last year with Mike Elko. I think they won 9 games. You take a look at North Carolina, who has the best quarterback in one of the best quarterbacks in the country, Drake May, who has been churning out running back after running back in the Mac Brown era. Well, at least the second version of the Mac Brown era. There is tremendous talent on that side who have been teams that have been pushing the college football playoff envelope. Let's not act like 2 years ago Wake Forest wasn't like undefeated after 8 games or something like that. Let's not act like what was the team called? Oh, of course it's gonna slip my mind as soon as I mention it. So act like Pitt wasn't in a New Year's Six bowl game like 2 years ago. It's these are great teams with great players, and one of the biggest things about the NFL is the NFL draft. Right? We love talking about prospects, evaluating prospects, things of that nature. Well, that's a great way to evaluate prospects. And as you mentioned, Georgia Tech. Well, the 13th overall pick in the, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 12th in this year's NFL draft was Jahmyr Gibbs. Before he transferred to Alabama, he was lighting up at Georgia Tech. That would have given the entire country a tremendous opportunity to see what kind of talent that kid had. No matter what way you slice it, again, there's nothing bad from this. It's an established network with an established parent company that, like you mentioned, has been doing football games for a long time. And maybe I'm just a little upset at people who are annoyed at this move because I'm a Hawaii fan. In order to watch Hawaii, I mean, it's a little different now that I'm in the mainland because I can stream it and do this weird thing on my phone. But if you're in the islands and you're trying to watch a Hawaii game that's not on a nationally broadcast network, you got to pay a pay-per-view price every single time. And that's just not fair. And these fans of these lower tier ACC teams, they're passionate about their teams and they're not being able to go to every single game. So allowing them more opportunities to view their team it's a great thing. Then we look at who they're playing. The first game, Pitt versus Cincinnati, they're gonna play out of conference. Well, this is a great opportunity for you to see other teams from different conferences. A great opportunity to get a closer look at the other teams they play, FBS, FCS teams, HBCU teams, teams that are even lower level if they play them, whatever it is. And I literally cannot find a flaw in this at all. And when we're talking about educating and giving accessibility to the country to watch a variety of programs, this is the first step of what you need to do in order to make this accessible to as many people as possible. Now, I understand there's a little bit of a higher price because CW isn't one of your traditional cable networks, but you're gonna pay even more to try and access, CBS Sports or NBC Sports or Bally's previous year or ACC Network or Longhorn Network if we're just naming off networks. So it is a small price to pay, but it's a step in the right direction. I could not be any more happier with this move.
I mean, you don't have to pay anything at all because CW's over the air. Like it
Is it?
is it's the fifth network, like the fifth broadcast network. So you
Well, thank you for
don't
educating me. I don't have cable, so I'm strictly through streaming services, so I didn't know.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's like right now, like before the college football season, I'm just rocking with with the antenna and the streaming services of my roommates. But yeah, like you don't have to pay anything at all. So like that's why it's just so huge, which like you mentioned earlier with like the SEC and the Big Ten being just juggernauts in terms of media. And like nowadays, it's like honestly the goal for the ACC, Pac-12, and Big 12 and on a lesser level, the American and Mountain West. I mean, even though they're group of five conferences, is to be that third kind of power conference in the hierarchy, third power conference in the food chain. Like that's honestly the niche you want to carve because you will never be able to compete with the Big Ten and SEC with the money they're getting. But if you want to carve your own niche in terms of exposure, that's definitely the way to go. And earlier this week at the Big 12 Media Day, I know Brett Yormark was talking about Thursday and Friday night games where it's like honestly if that's the Big 12's approach, I'm not sure that's best approach, honestly. I mean, rather going instead to weeknights instead of I mean, especially Thursday. I have no problem with Friday, but I mean with the amount of schools they have in Texas competing with high school football, that's gonna be an uphill battle for the Houstons, Texas Tech, the TCUs and whatnot. Thursday you're competing against the NFL. Like the ACC's alternative is just, want to latch on to a network that's been kind of in decline. And people talk about all the shows all they want, but I saw a stat like the other day that 98% of Fox's views came from unscripted shows. Like, so essentially it's just sports and The Masked Singer that are, the Masked Singer, I guess, and whatever show that Gordon Ramsay's doing nowadays that's carrying the network. It's like, who cares what programs are around the network? Like, you won't even watch it. Like people complain all the time. They've been complaining. It's like, oh, like, this whole era around reruns of Dawson's Creek. It's like, who cares? Like, you're not watching Dawson's Creek. Like, why does it matter to you? Like, just watch the game itself. But yeah, like, I think this is great for the ACC to, I mean, maybe not from a money standpoint with that, I guess, that bad TV deal up until 2036, like the grant of rights, but in terms of exposure, to be the third highest ranking Power Five conference.
Yeah, it really is. And let's not act like the ACC didn't almost have a mass exodus like a month ago, So now you're securing viewership and money for a variety of teams. Being able to keep that core together is going to be crucial in order to keep the conference alive. And let's not act like all fans are located in the towns in which the teams play in. Not all Michigan fans are in Michigan or Ann Arbor. Not all Texas fans are in Austin or just the state of Texas. There's fans all over the country, especially alumni all over the country. And when you want to talk about getting donations from your alumni, having their team on national TV is a very easy way to do it. Now, going back to my situation with Hawaii, because obviously that's my hometown team, there was a statistic that came out in which enrollment into the university was in like this century was the highest in 2007 and 2008. Clearly a correlation to the success the football team had. So if you want to talk about just from a overlooking standpoint, if your team has success on the football field and everyone sees it, that's going to put that university in a lot of future college students' mind when they're making their decisions. So there's just a variety of benefits from this move, and like you mentioned, no football fan is going to watch the CW and think, I hate watching this football game because eventually I might see a rerun of Heart of Dixie. No one thinks like that. That's just not realistic. I can't name one show on Fox right now. If you ask me name a scripted TV show on Fox to save your life, I'm gonna say Glee. Somebody gonna say that show's been gone for like 10 years, and they're gonna shoot me in the head. Like nobody knows a show on Fox. Maybe Family Guy. That's why I remember Animation Domination on Sundays after football because I saw the commercials while watching football. But that again, it's ridiculous. And every conference in the country needs to carve out a niche or something for itself. The Pac-12 is trying with Pac-12 After Dark. It's kind of failing. The Mountain West has kind of had a lock on like the end of the week slash like weekend sometimes. Obviously the big conference has its stuff. Everyone loves Tuesday night action. I mean, if you don't love action, you might want to check yourself because everyone loves the right? So, what is the niche for the Big 12? What is the niche for the Pac 12 now that if now USC, UCLA is leaving? I don't know. But the niche for the ACC is no matter what we're doing, you're going to watch it. And that's exactly what needs to be done. Everyone's going to watch Florida State. Everyone's going to watch Miami. Everyone's going to watch Clemson. 50% of those people are going to watch Duke. And they're going to see how good Duke is. So when Duke knocks off Florida State or when Duke knocks off Clemson, not many people are going to be surprised, as it's going to be more of a talking point. And again, the conference can only go up from there. If you don't like this move, what's wrong with you? That's all I can say. Again, that comes from a selfish place because I had to watch Hawaii play on the ESPN Ticker Taper app, go play by play because I did not have access or the finances to buy the pay-per-views. If you're a Duke alumnus in California, you can just turn on TV and watch the team play. Simple as that. Love it. And I was doing some research just on the season for the coaches and everything, and you have some talented coaches in the ACC that are eventually going to move to a better program, and it's going to just give an insight into those coaches before they move, so more people can be exposed to them and not have to recycle the same old coaches like the past. Shout out Hugh Freeze for continuously getting jobs. He doesn't deserve them. Hopefully, see some of these great coaches in the ACC, guys like Pat Narduzzi, guys like Mike Elko, maybe they can get their shot in the SEC because they're more deserving than Hugh Freeze, the guy that can barely win, and the guy that will definitely get your program suspended.
Yeah, no, I mean for sure. Like, I mean, I can totally see sort of like new stars in the coaching world emerge from this deal. From like schools like, Boston College, say like Boston College, has like a solid year. I mean, I can imagine like I guess like going back to 2018 when like there was a point in November in the second week of November where Boston College beat Clemson. They controlled their own destiny for the New Year's Six to win the ACC and everything. Um, so I can just imagine teams like that. Like Boston College probably get like a couple slots well, I mean, yeah, I think they probably did have a couple RSN slots throughout that season. But also too, like you mentioned earlier, the mass exodus, and I saw people saying that this would be that the reason that, Clemson, Florida State, I guess the Magnificent Seven, it was like Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia, and some others. I forget who the others are. Would leave the ACC. That I guess the CW deal was the breaking point, and I don't think that this is going to be the breaking point for that reason because, like we said earlier, like it's not going to be the Florida States and the Clemsons that'll have their games on this deal. Maybe for basketball, but we all know that football drives the bus. Like we all know that. Um, we'd be disingenuous to think that, I guess Duke and North Carolina having, a non-conference game or not a non-conference, but a game against, Boston College or Syracuse on the CW is the breaking point for them, leaving the conference. So I mean, I just want to know your thoughts on like what this means for like the ACC stability.
I think it means everything. If I'm being honest, there's two reasons why you would leave the ACC. From a football standpoint, I'm not touching the basketball part, but there is no guarantee right now in the ACC because of lack of conference prestige that a team could go 12-0 with a conference championship and still make the college football playoff. It's unfortunately not guaranteed for them because of the biases surrounding the other teams. If Clemson goes let's say Clemson or Florida State goes undefeated, and let's say Alabama or Georgia goes undefeated, Ohio State goes undefeated, TCU goes undefeated, and USC goes undefeated. It's going to come down to ACC and Big 12 because the other team, Ohio State, is going to be in. Alabama, Georgia, which one of those two is going to be in? And probably that if they both go undefeated and one loses in the SEC championship game, the other one's probably in too. USC would be in. And the second reason why someone would leave the ACC is because the contract money from viewership is just not happening. Now, obviously, they're stuck in a horrific deal that's going to last for a while. But if they can hold on to these teams, or if they leave and they're able to accumulate better teams by growing the viewership of the ACC and growing the viewership on those mid-tier teams, elevating them, allowing them to recruit more players, allowing them to recruit better players, allowing them to make promises to their families that they're going to be able to see them on TV every single week, that's going to make the entire conference better. And by that, you're going to be able to negotiate more favorable terms come 2034, 2036, whatever that thing expires. No matter what, having viewership is crucial to everything. And we can even correlate the success of the SEC now to the contract that made with CBS back in the day. When I was first born, the SEC was not the top dog in college football. Auburn in '04 went undefeated and didn't even get a shot at the national title. It was between the Pac-12, or at that time the Pac-10, and the Big 12, and the Big East because of Miami. Um, I think Florida State was also in the Big East. So it was between those teams. CBS and the SEC signed that deal, and from the year 2000, what was it, 2006, all the way to what 2014, which is the year Florida State won. SEC team was no, sorry, 2015, the year after Florida State, whichever was the first year of the college football playoff. I think there was at least one SEC team in the national championship game. I mean, what Florida won in '06, LSU won in '07, Florida won in '08, Alabama won it in 2009. 2010 was Alabama again, I believe, over Notre Dame. 2011, no, 2010 was Auburn. 2011 was Alabama. I think that was the year they beat LSU. 2012 was probably Alabama again, knowing them. Then 2013, I think that was the year Auburn lost to Florida State. So that's a tremendously long run of dominance. And we even look at the college football national championship picture today. Georgia won it the past 2 years. Before that, Alabama won it. Before that, LSU won it. Like it's, I think what Ohio State is the only team not from the SEC to win a national championship in the college football playoff era, if I'm not mistaken. Because I can't think of another one. Oh, sorry,
Yeah, I think it was Ohio
Clemson,
State.
I Clemson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. So Clemson and Ohio State were the only teams, right? So direct correlation between having a great TV deal and having conference prestige and national championships. Getting more teams, looking, having the nation look at your teams a lot more is just a benefit. And maybe because when Wake Forest was undefeated, I don't think they even cracked the top five. I think they were stuck at 8 before they lost to Clemson. Maybe more eyes than they might have been elevated into the college football playoff picture. Maybe there's a difference in the way they prepare for that game against Clemson. I don't know. That's all water under the bridge. All I know is more eyes on you, the better. The ACC made a great move with this. Even if they do lose their top dogs, Florida State, Miami, whoever, they can still bring in a lot of talent. There's a lot of teams that are going to need homes again in another 5 years. And I just literally, I cannot find a single reason why anybody hates this. It's utterly ridiculous that if you hate this, more viewership, more eyes, bigger money, bigger prize. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for sure. I agree. I mean, so we'll see in the future, honestly, like whether this does bring more eyes, which I think it will to the conference, and I think it'll just give them the edge over the Big 12, which like I think the perception now has shifted from being in the top four to being, I think I'm trying to think who gets the bye. I think I guess yeah, I guess it still is like you still want to be like in the top four echelon of the playoff because like you get a bye week I mean for the quarterfinals so
And
and you don't have to oh yeah no
no,
I'm sorry go
no,
ahead.
no, you made a great point. I was gonna say, even with that, when we get to expanded college football playoff, a lot of those mid-tier ACC teams, even the upper tier, are going to be fringe teams. And having more, and I'm sorry, the committee is so biased and so blind that it's almost criminal. But they also are very persuaded by how the media is feeling. The only reason USC wasn't in the playoff is because they lost to Utah twice. I think if they lose to Utah once, whether they beat them in the championship game or they beat them in Utah, I think they're in, even if they do have that one loss to them, because they're USC. Having a network like CW, let's say a team like North Carolina goes 10-2 and they're a fringe playoff team, or let's say a team like what's a let's say Virginia Tech somehow captures the magic of old and goes 11-1, but nobody really thinks about Virginia Tech that much. Well, having a lot of people watch them on the CW is going to lead to a lot of people talking, which is going to lead to that bias being affected by the committee, which might lead to maybe having two ACC teams in compared to just one. You never know, but that's just another aspect of this that people aren't really talking about. I think when you see the expanded college football playoff, the Big 12 is going to be hosed a lot more than you think. There's going to be an Oklahoma State team that goes 11-1 and lose in the conference championship game, and they're going to be on the out. There's going to be a Baylor team that goes 10-2 and wins the conference, and they're not going to be in. You know, there's going to be a team like Kansas State this year. Great season, double-digit wins the conference over the team that actually goes to the college football playoff, and they don't get any love. So I think that might be the tipping point is having that deal that might get more ACC teams in compared to the other teams in other conferences.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you make because I mean, we forget who votes on these. I mean, voters on the committees these teams. It's like people that watch the games. I wouldn't say votes anymore because I mean, the AP poll isn't deciding national titles anymore. I mean, it's not journalists deciding it. But I mean, on the college football playoff committee, I don't know who the makeup is, but it's athletic directors. Shout out, I know Bob Caslin, old superintendent of the United States Military Academy, at least during my freshman year. He was on the committee. I think he was either chair or he was just on the committee itself. But yeah, people like that are the ones that are in the discussion or in these rooms looking at these games. And the more exposure for the ACC, the better, frankly. Um, instead of like having the playoff committee having to watch games on a Thursday or Friday for like the Big 12 thinking about it. Like, of course, the Pac-12 always being hosed, but I mean, we will see the secondary and tertiary effects of this, but I think if you're an ACC fan, it's nothing but excitement is what you should be feeling, honestly, for these games to be reached by a broader audience and not on a regional sports network, which honestly they're just obsolete at this point unless they're owned by the franchise that they broadcast. Like, I mean, yes, will always be viable. SNY will always be viable, and Nesson because they're owned by those franchises, the Red Sox, Yankees, and Mets. But otherwise, like RSNs that are just ran by like Bally Sports, I guess AT&T or Time Warner. I think Time Warner owns the AT&T networks. It's just obsolete. It's just like not a good place for college athletics anymore. Um, but yeah,
Ask the University of Texas how they feel with the Longhorn Network. If that was such a moneymaker for them, they wouldn't be going to the SEC. Case
yeah,
in
no,
point.
I mean, yeah, I didn't even think about the Longhorn Network because I know they had like a few like athletic events per year. I know it would always be like Texas Rice or something like that. That would be on the Longhorn Network. But I didn't know there was discontent with the network, to be honest with you.
I mean, I don't have anything that says that they are discontent, but I'm just putting two and two together. You launch this network in the wake of other conferences having their networks because you saw the Big 12 didn't have a strong network deal. Obviously, your fan base isn't strong enough to sustain success with just having the Longhorn network. So you're going to an SEC, a conference you know you can't win in. You know you can't win. Oh, my camera fell. But now we fell again. But no, you know you can't. You know you can't. See, I felt like the program at Texas that it was falling down the ladder. You know you can't win against the SEC. I mean, I don't want to hear about Alabama because that was the worst Alabama team Nick Saban has ever had since his first year there. Okay, and Texas lost to what? Texas Tech this year. They lost to Washington. Like, you're not beating Georgia. You're not beating Bama. You're not beating LSU. You couldn't even beat Arkansas 2 years ago. Like, but the money. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I agree, but yeah, like I don't have anything else really to add. I mean, about this. I think it's a great move. We both have, sung praises and like sound like a broken record just mentioning this being, just a great move for the ACC. But do you have anything final to add, Brock, about this, about anything really in terms of college football?
Not really. I'm just gonna be excited that I have once again another opportunity to view more teams and more games about the sport that I love so much. And it's gonna be really cool to see some of these programs that used to be really good that haven't been good of late get their time back into the national spotlight, like the Virginia Techs, Georgia Techs, so on and so forth. And like I said, when it comes to the education of football around the country, those FCS teams, HBCU teams, if they go any other level lower than that, those teams are gonna have an opportunity to, be on national TV. And unfortunately, the reality when it comes to college football is that a lot of kids have to leave their homes to get their opportunity. Parents aren't rich, families aren't rich. A lot of families couldn't even afford to buy, other streaming services to watch their kids. So now they have an opportunity to see their sons more times than they probably expected to, and that's a beautiful thing. And football and family are two words that have gone together in the media for quite a while, but it really is a beautiful thing when you have your family supporting you pursuing what you love. And this CW deal allows more families to do that. And that's the last thing I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely don't have anything to add. In terms of smaller programs and these paycheck games getting exposure instead of getting backlogged to a regional sports network. And then also too, like that's a great point on the families just being able to watch their play, their sons play ball, throughout the country. Like not, of course, like there will always be local recruiting within the ACC, but of course, take for instance, DJ Uyangalele, a West Coast product, and him playing at Clemson. This puts guys like his family recruits that take the same path that he did to schools like Clemson and North Carolina and whatnot, to allow them to watch him more. So just a great move all around. Beyond the business aspect of it. Because we forget, that these players are people just like us, and with families just like us who pursue the same things. So that'll be very, very well said, Brock. And I think that's a high note to end this on. Brock, I mean, thank you so much for being flexible, for just getting off one grind onto another, and joining me on this podcast for sure. You can check out Brock's content at Midnight Sports today. I'm gonna put the link to his channel. Which do you want to say the name of your channel really quick?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, Midnight Sports Today, just like you said. I'm on Twitter at MNS Today. Follow me, I follow back. I also work with Team NBS Media. I have a bunch of articles on there. Just wrote a couple articles about football, one about the XFL, one why I believe that Jake Dickert is failing at Washington State, and another one about the Northwestern situation with Pat Fitzgerald and why I support his firing. You can also catch my college football content on there on our YouTube channel. I have a show with the great Bill Carroll called College Football Forecast. To come out with a new episode every single week. This week we are recording. We'll be talking about the Big Ten, our outlook for the conference, and how we feel they're matching up with the other conferences in the country. We're having a great guest come on, and Josh Keatley, writer for Buckeyes Wire and everything Ohio State. So check us out on there. And yeah, if you're watching us on my old content, like you said, check me out on YouTube, Midnight Sports Day. You'll see Omar on there a lot. You'll see Jackson Danner on there, a couple of those episodes as well. So if you love this podcast and you love the work that Omar and his team does, you can see him in a different light on my stuff as well.
yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for putting your content, or just like mentioning all the stuff that you do, because we're all in this together. We're all just trying to cover the sport we love, all the different angles, and just help one another out. So thanks again, Brock. Be sure to check out Brock's stuff. I mean, not just the pieces that I'm on, but also, I mean, him and Bill Carroll do amazing work, amazing in-depth work, especially like come draft season. Like, I'm lazy come draft season. I'm not a big draft guy. I'm a college football guy through and through. So I mean, they fill in, like, they just fill so many loose ends come draft season and off season, which is, it's just amazing. So thanks again, Brock, and until next time, signing off at 5:25 a.m. This early El Paso morning. Luckily, you got the day off. Happy birthday, First Armor Division, and until next time, everyone, peace, love, and salt.